What's going on? Welcome back to Trending Stocks. Today I want to talk to you on SoFi. So far, SoFi is doing phenomenal. I want to give you an overview of some of the current data points, break it down on what's really influencing it and the broader market, and go over everything else you need to know. But first, make sure to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I always greatly appreciate that. And with that said, let's get right to it. So right now, SoFi is up 0.24%. I know it doesn't sound like much, but in comparison to the broader market, it is doing phenomenal. And so I'm going to take that as a pretty good success. 25.9 million shares have been traded, 58.8 is the average. So big money isn't necessarily getting into SoFi and a lot of other growth stocks, most likely last minute jitters associated to NVIDIA earnings coming out tomorrow. And I do believe even at the time of doing this video, NVIDIA is down about 6.5%. So big money is clearly just sitting on the sidelines. But despite that though, you do see some pretty good transactions. So these are all the transactions that did occur above $100,000 on the secondary market. So 3.68 million, and then aside from that, pretty quiet. Most likely this transaction right here is just market makers covering the options, especially that did expire in the money last Friday, like I said would happen. There wasn't really any transactions pre-market to really justify that or anything, so of course that's a fairly good thing. Aside from that though, one abnormal thing that is happening to SoFi is that shorts are currently returning about 186,000 shares. 16.55% of the free float is being shorted and 150.91 million shares overall are being shorted. Based on right now, there has been no actual news from SoFi to justify this green day, just other than just a lot of optimism. And like I said, this is very abnormal because across the board, so the whole market, shorts are increasing their position. So what is with SoFi? I haven't really seen any news to justify that. No recent analyst ratings. The last one was done by Compass Point 19 days ago. Not the best price target, so $4. But aside from that, there's been absolutely no news. But unofficial news, so there's been a couple other, I guess, pieces talking on just SoFi and just whatever else. So behind the scenes retail and I guess a lot of articles are kind of bullish on SoFi, but no official news. So it's just kind of stuck in limbo. Technicals are still looking somewhat good and primed and ready for a nice breakout. I'm going to play this video near the tail end, and it does talk on Walmart earnings and why, even though there's a lot of different situations affecting the broader market right now, we are in a better circumstance compared to last year. So I feel like a lot of people might get a lot of good information out of this. Talking on options right now, so $2.32 million in calls being purchased versus 918,000 in puts. Sentiment wise, very much evenly divided, but 49% of all the options being done today are optimistic. So more of a continuation of a value rally of sorts. And even more so if you do anticipate that NVIDIA hits a home run and gives good future guidance for their upcoming earnings, stocks such as SoFi is going to get a even bigger rush of value investors getting in. That's just my own opinion, of course. But of the call options that are being purchased, there is a consensus for it to be above roughly about $9 by the end of this week, and looking at puts, it's anticipated to be sub $8. So both extremes somewhat, if that makes sense. And with this upcoming week, like I kind of signaled, looking at the open interest, it is kind of free to run up to around the $9 range. This is where there's more of a wall at 22,000 for the open interest, so market makers won't really want SoFi to be above $9. But we'll just have to once again wait and see what does come out in the broader market. So looking at some of the support and resistance points right now with that $8.38, it is trading between this pivot and this R1. So $8.24 is going to be that next strong support that you'll want to watch for it to hold. And conveniently, it did actually bounce off of that for a low. So that's also probably what is giving SoFi a nice boost up today, is just more of a rebounding off of its technicals. And then aside from that, $8.55 is going to be that next strong resistance that you'll want to watch for SoFi to get above. So it has been steady. SoFi is definitely doing fairly well compared to even looking at my watch list right here, which does have a lot of good, crazy growth stocks, and a lot of which are in the EV sector. But Lucid is down, Tesla is down, like everything is down. Even PayPal is doing all right, somewhat, only down 0.68%. But aside from that, everything is pulling back. And so when it comes down to the actual technicals, it is in the higher percentile of the Bollinger Band, and it does look like it is trying to gain enough momentum to get above this 50-day moving average. And so if that does happen, then yes, you could easily see that $9 being touched very soon. aside from that, looking at stochastic, you do see the white line above the red showing a bullish sentiment, and as well, it is roughly around the 50 range, so it's a little bit neutral. So not overbought, not oversold, so that is generally a good thing. Could give it a nice justification to go up higher. A number of buyers or retail investors are starting to get back in today after their, I guess, diminishing or sell off or whatever you want to call it from Friday. So I think bigger and better things are still coming down the pipeline for SoFi, and I think today is a very good example of that. But aside from that, there's just a lot of things the rest of the week that could really disrupt SoFi and just the broader market significantly, and vice versa could happen, right? If earnings come out fairly good, then you could see a nice continuation of a run. But with all of that, one final thing I just wanted to do was play this video, like I said, because I feel like a lot of people will get a lot of good information out of this, even though on social media you see a lot of people panicking and that a recession is coming. This video might reassure you a little bit.
Our next guest, not too worried about either company, Walmart and Home Depot's weaker than expected outlooks. Joining us now, D.A. Davidson, Michael Baker. He has a $195 price target and buy rating on Walmart, and $344 price target and neutral rating on Home Depot. So maybe we can just start out kind of high level and get a sense from you. The guidance itself was kind of muted for both companies, but there are certain interesting factors in Q1, like the leap day, or the fact that it's a leap year, so we have an extra day and inflation moderating here. What would you kind of say from these two snapshots kind of exemplifies the state of the consumer right now? Are they as resilient as we were hoping they would be?
Yeah, I think both companies are facing headwinds, but it feels like the headwinds are less today than they were a year ago. A year ago, we were all thinking we were going into a recession in 2023. That hasn't happened, and maybe it's going to happen in the future, but it just seems less likely now than it did a year ago. So the outlooks are improved in that sense. I remember Walmart's outlook for the full year is actually better, or at least in line with consensus. They had a little bit of a lower first quarter outlook, which that's what we're not that worried about. They've been sort of guiding to a lower next quarter and then beating it all year. But in general, it does seem like the consumer is holding up well. One important aspect in both of them, but maybe more important from Walmart, is the concerns that they had about pricing last quarter. Remember on their third quarter call, they had the big D word. They talked about deflation and that as a potential. They backed off on that a little bit this quarter, saying that the price declines that they're seeing, they are still seeing declines, but not as much as would have been suggested last quarter. And so I think they've sort of taken that deflation risk down quite a bit, and that's a positive.
So yeah, ultimately a lot of this is influencing the broader market, and in through that, SoFi. So it's interesting to hear his viewpoint on consumers. And one thing I wanted to, on a side note unrelated to SoFi, is they talked on leap year. And I kind of saw this article saying that essentially algorithms won't necessarily know and pick up on the 29th. So the volume might be like 1/8 or 1/10 of what truly does happen. So kind of take a mental note of that and just pay attention to the volume on SoFi and just a lot of other stocks that I've been really saying that has been having, I guess, a lot of higher algorithmic trading. So just kind of take a note of that. That might be coming down the pipeline. Very interesting to be aware of. But aside from that, let me know your thoughts. Give yourself a shout out. Have you been buying? Have you been selling? What have you been doing with SoFi? And with all that, I appreciate all of you watching.